Okay, good morning. I'm Lauren Armstrong, here today with Minister Rebecca Schultz, Alberta's Minister of Children's Services, and Minister Huson from the federal government. He is the Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development. Both are here to make an exciting announcement. We will hear from Minister Huson first, followed by Minister Schultz, and then they would be happy to take your questions.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I want to, of course, express my delight and pleasure to join all of you today. Unfortunately, we have to do it virtually. It would have been great to join in person, but hopefully in the future. It is because it's been an unusual summer for everyone, as Canadians are still grappling with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Right now, Canadians are concerned with so many aspects of their daily lives, their health, their jobs, their finances, their kids. And as we begin to enter stages of recovery, supporting Canadian families, supporting Canadian businesses and communities to adjust to our new reality, that will be our continuing priority to help Canadians in all aspects. One thing we know for sure is that Canada is so much stronger when we work together, when all levels of government work together and continue the strong collaboration that we've had. That is why we've joined forces with our provincial and territorial counterparts to come up with a 6 to 8 month plan to restart the economy and make our country more resilient to potential future waves of the coronavirus. The Safe Restart Agreement was designed to help Canadians get back to work safely. It represents a federal investment of over $19 billion to help provinces and territories to deliver and manage their COVID-19 related responses. Of course, getting Canadians back to work isn't as simple as reopening businesses, following shutdowns and providing employees with personal protective equipment. Many parents also cannot get back to work until they can find safe and affordable childcare for their kids. Temporary closures and loss of critical revenue from parents' fees has put a great deal of pressure on the early learning and childcare sector. We know that that sector has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. So the safe reopening also means added costs for childcare centers as they adjust to the new challenges that they face. That is why our government, the Government of Canada, is providing $625 million to provinces and territories to help ensure that there is enough safe childcare spaces available to parents as they gradually return to work. In particular, the province of Alberta will receive $72 million to support its childcare system to recover better. This is on top of the $45 million that we have provided from the federal government to the government of Alberta through the extension of the bilateral agreement between Canada and Alberta on early learning and childcare. So the new one-year agreement is providing $45 million investment, and today Alberta is also receiving $72 million as part of the Safe Restart assistance to the childcare sector in Canada. When you add this to the funding that we've already committed, the Government of Canada will spend over $1 billion on early learning and childcare this year across the country. This is a record amount, and we can all agree that extraordinary circumstances demand extraordinary solutions. And this is what Canadians expect of their governments, to work together, to have their backs, and to help them get back to work and recover in a more stronger and resilient manner. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has truly shown us that we cannot work in silos. So federal, provincial, and territorial governments, as well as our municipal partners, will continue to work together to safely get kids back into quality and safe learning environments and to help get parents back to work. Fighting COVID-19 pandemic has been a joint effort from the get-go, and I look forward to continuing to work with Minister Schultz and my other provincial and territorial colleagues as we make these necessary steps towards a full and strong recovery. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Well, thank you so much, Minister Huson, both for your collaboration over the last number of months, but also for your commitment to supporting working parents and to the childcare sector here in Alberta. We all know we have a long road ahead in our recovery from this ongoing pandemic. Over the past few months, we've all been forced to weather this storm from an unprecedented health crisis combined with a worsening economy here in Alberta, but we've also had to adjust to a new way of living. Alberta's childcare workers, operators, and owners have been no exception. When centres closed, parents of almost 110,000 children across Alberta were without childcare at a moment's notice. This meant many were forced to stay home instead of going to work, and the importance of childcare was put into sharp focus. Then it became clear that a world, or in Alberta, without childcare simply was not an option. So hundreds of daycares and out-of-school care centres stepped up at the height of fear and uncertainty way back another number of months ago to reopen and to provide childcare for the children of essential service workers. It was truly impressive, and on behalf of all of my colleagues and all Albertans, I can say we are truly grateful. Now the recovery is underway and Albertans are getting back to work. Most childcare centres across the province and preschools have opened, but many are still struggling to get through these uncertain times as enrollment remains low right across the province. Thanks to the funding we're announcing today, throughout the fall, the childcare sector in Alberta will benefit from a total of $87 million in supports. This will ensure that childcare centres, daycares, out-of-school care centres, approved family day homes, and preschools can adhere to the health and safety guidelines put forward by our Chief Medical Officer of Health, and parents can absolutely be assured that their children are receiving the best possible care. Childcare programs have already begun to receive the September support of $109 per licensed space. This is the third phase of funding that we committed to this spring and have started to roll that funding out to centres across the province. They will now receive $200 per space plus a $2,500 grant per childcare centre in both October and November through this grant we're announcing today. This funding will help childcare providers with costs associated with reopening, from additional staffing to cleaning supplies, safety equipment, PPE, necessary upgrades to comply with health guidelines, and overhead expenses not covered due to the closure. We need childcare to support our economic recovery so that more parents can get back to work knowing that their children are in a safe and healthy environment. This funding will do just that. It will give providers the resources they need and in turn give the parents peace of mind knowing their children and their childcare centre is the best place for their child. So thank you again, Minister Huson and the federal government for your commitment to supporting children and families in Alberta with this new funding. I have to say we have a great working relationship and are happy to work together on our shared priorities. Albertans have proudly and happily contributed billions to Confederation when times were good, and I'm so glad to see the federal government send a little bit of that back now that we're in need to support Alberta families right across this province at a difficult time. Alberta's government knows that a strong childcare sector is essential for our economic recovery. As we continue to cautiously relaunch and reopen childcare programs across the province, we'll continue to support working parents through increased subsidy rates, targeted programs to help kids with special needs, and space creation grants to create spaces where they're needed. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Minister Huson. I'm so glad the technology worked in our favor, and we are both happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Ministers. We will go with anyone gathered here first. You can see Rory over there has a microphone. Hi. If you would identify yourselves and then please go ahead.
Hi, Rafi Bujikanian with CBC National News. My question is for both ministers. It's not related to today's announcement. On Sunday, there was an anti-racism rally held in Red Deer where the organizers say they were accosted and attacked by far-right members, and it turned pretty violent. The RCMP has confirmed they have not made any arrests, and among the activists, there were complaints that police were present and did not do anything about it. There was a previously advertised video on social media threatening violence against this rally. So my question is, do you think police take far-right extremism seriously enough in Canada, and what more should they be doing about this? And if either of you speak French, I'm sure my Radio-Canada colleagues would appreciate a French answer as well. Thank you.
Minister Huson, you can go first if you'd like.
Yes, well, that's a really important question. I think that obviously we as a government believe that the charter rights of all Canadians should be respected and enforced. Freedom of expression is guaranteed in our constitution in Canada. People are free to express their opinions on issues around racism and discrimination. I think it's important to recognize that the vast majority of Canadians are now demanding that we do better in positions of leadership to dismantle barriers to success for an unacceptably high number of Canadians. There's many Canadians, Black, Indigenous, and people of color in Canada who experience discrimination as a lived reality, and for them, Canada has to do better. And Canadians are asking us to do better in positions of leadership, and we have to support those who are calling on our society to do better. And it is not just the right thing to do, but including people, making sure that everyone has an equal chance of success will make Canada an even better country.
And so I would just echo, I'm not certain of the details of what happened, but generally speaking, I do know that my colleague, the Minister of Culture, Multiculturalism and Status of Women, spoke out about this yesterday. Acts of racism are not acceptable, and certainly when it relates to our justice system and our police services, this is exactly what Minister Madhu, our Minister of Justice, will be looking into in his work moving forward in terms of reviewing the Police Act. And so I do look forward to the work that he's doing, consulting with Albertans right across this province with different backgrounds, hearing their experiences, meeting with organizations to determine where we need to do better.
Before we go to the next question, I should also add we're at the lovely Canada Place Childcare Society, and we do have Amy Lynn Hark, the Executive Director, available if you have any questions about day-to-day childcare for her. So, Rory, if you'll...
Tom Vernon from Global News. I want to ask about affordability. We do hear concerns from families about the affordability of childcare, particularly with reduced hours happening right now. Is there more discussions on more longer-term programming to lower the cost of childcare, not just for low-income families, but across the board?
Absolutely. And so part of what we announced a couple of months ago as part of the bilateral agreement was a new subsidy program, as you referenced. And so we here in Alberta do have the highest subsidies in the entire country, with the exception of Quebec. I'm proud to say that now, no matter where you live in Alberta, low and middle income families will, 28,000 of them will see an increase in their subsidies, and some parents will be able to access childcare for as low as $13 a day. That's something that we're incredibly proud of. Right now, in a pandemic, this is certainly an uncertain situation, and as many of you know, while 92% of child care centers, preschools, out-of-school care centers, and day homes are open in Alberta, we're at just over half capacity. And so that makes it really difficult for child care centers to meet to pay their bills, right, without increasing parent fees. That's what this funding is going to do. It's going to make sure that at a time where we're not at full capacity and we have very strict health guidelines to ensure that kids and families are safe and healthy, that child care centers can step up, adhere to those guidelines, keep kids safe, knowing that they're not at full capacity, but they don't have to increase parent fees. In the long term, that's something that we've heard. We are working with child care centers, our child care working group, to look at some of the feedback that we heard. Just this past spring, we consulted with the child care sector and parents right across Alberta for the first time in over a decade. And so we did talk a little bit about affordability and what's driving some of those costs. Some of that will be addressed through the red tape reductions and the feedback that we heard in those consultations that are going into our legislative and regulatory review. And we're going to continue to listen to child care centers to better understand where those pinch points are and how we can step up to support them.
I just want to add to that. We are equally ambitious on childcare. We of course understand that this is provincial jurisdiction. However, our government has indicated that we want to be a strong partner. We want to provide the supports necessary to ensure that we keep uh, creating more and more affordable and accessible childcare spaces. We've created over 40,000 affordable childcare spaces since we came into office in 2015. We have an ambitious plan to create an additional 250,000 before and after school programs. Our target of investing over $7.5 billion over the next number of years on early learning and childcare, that's continuing. This $625 million is in addition to that. It's to help, as Minister Schultz said, to help this sector that has been hit hard to recover better, to be able to adjust to the new realities, to be able to pay for additional cleaning supplies or extra space and so on. So we are not only here for the short term, but our ambitions in terms of enabling a huge amount of affordable and accessible childcare spaces in Canada to be created. That ambition is still there, and the funding that has been committed to that is ongoing. And but we will continue to work with provinces and territories, including Alberta, that is equally ambitious in the creation of more affordable and accessible childcare spaces for parents.
Great. We'll go to one more here in person, and then we can go to the phones.
Hello, it's Duncan Kinney from the Progress Report. I suppose my question is around how this announcement actually affects things on the ground. To give a personal example, my partner works in theater, actually works in the building right behind us, and doesn't have a job right now because of the pandemic. And during this pandemic, our childcare costs would have gone from $500 a month under the old NDP program to $1,300 a month. So around $7,000 a year to $24,000 a year. How does this actually lower the costs for parents who want to put their children back into childcare?
So that's a good question. So under the previous pilot program and data from the pilot program, even centers who were included in that pilot program identified that there was an inequity in terms of selecting a few centers and providing supports to a very select few Alberta parents. Under this new subsidy model, it respects parent choice, that whatever center family chooses, and families make those choices based on a variety of things, location, whether they want it close to their home, close to their work, based on their hours, things like that they can choose and now receive subsidy as low as $13 a day. We do understand that childcare centers, they set their own fees. And so if you are in a situation as a parent where you need help finding affordable childcare in your area, we do have supports within the ministry to help get you that information and to find a center that meets your specific needs. And also our new subsidy application form means that parents can apply and determine whether or not they're eligible for subsidy in about 10 minutes, which is super quick, super easy. And for parents, again, right across the province in whatever childcare setting that they choose. Specifically, this funding right now, given that most centers are not in fact at capacity, they're just over half full, that creates a real pinch for those centers when they're trying to, keep the lights on, keep their doors open, but they're not at full capacity. And so this funding means that they can adhere to the public health guidelines, manage cohorts, pay their staff, and make sure that they are keeping kids and families safe without, as you mentioned, having to increase parent fees. So this will absolutely help with the affordability of childcare. And certainly if your childcare rates are going up, or you've seen that in your center and you need another option, they do set their own rates, but our ministry does have people who are able to step up and help.
Minister Huson, did you have anything to add on that?
Well, I just wanted to say that today's funding announcement and investment is about enabling childcare centers in Alberta to recover from the pandemic. They've been hit hard. They've seen their already very low profit margins take a hit, and they will have to spend a little bit more money to adhere to the public health requirements and the new normal. This $72 million is to enable them to do exactly that. The previous announcement of $45 million federal investment in early learning and childcare in Alberta was to contribute to that affordability, to that accessibility. And so we'll remain a true partner to Alberta when it comes to early learning and childcare, both again in the short term to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. I've been listening very carefully to stakeholders right across the country and childcare providers on exactly what they need to recover from this unfortunate pandemic, but also to not forget about the ambitious plans for the future to enable more and more parents to have this option of accessing quality and affordable childcare.
Okay, we will now go to the phone. Operator, would you please put through the first caller?
This is Bill Fortier with CTV News. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, thank you. Just want to make sure I have the numbers straight here. Mr. Hussein said $72 million today from Ottawa. That's new. Minister Schultz said a total of $87 million today. So does that mean the province's announcement today is $15 million? Is that correct?
So just to break down that number, we do have today $72 million in new funding, Safe Restart funding from the federal government, but we also had committed phase 3 funding in the spring that we hadn't announced in terms of how we were going to roll that funding out. So from the spring, this would be the $8 million as part of the bilateral agreement with Minister Hussein as part of the early learning and childcare bilateral agreement that we signed just a couple of months ago. So we were able to carry over $8 million from last year in terms of unspent funds to help us at this time right now, to help centers at this time right now, plus the $7 million in phase 3 funding. And we worked with childcare centers across the province. We've struck a childcare working group. And I do want to thank Minister Hussein for his flexibility so that we could reach out to Alberta childcare centers, get their feedback in terms of how we could best invest this money to have the biggest impact for centers and help them to recover safely and keep kids and families healthy and safe.
Okay, thank you. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Next is Lisa Johnson with Post Media. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. This is for Minister Schultz. I'm wondering, today's announcement represents, according to my calculations, about 2 months' worth of what the province would normally fund towards childcare in 2 payments, one in October and one in November. So this will essentially run out in December. Am I understanding that correctly? And just as a follow-up to that, like, what's the long-term plan for the province to keep these childcare centers afloat for the remainder of the pandemic?
That's an exceptional question, Lisa. Thank you so much for asking that. What we did when we started to negotiate this funding, after speaking initially with Minister Hussein, we went to our childcare working group to ask a number of questions, and some of it was that how best do we roll out this funding in a way that has the biggest impact on childcare centers and enables them to keep their spaces open. We need those spaces to remain open as Alberta's economy recovers and that parents are getting back to work. Having those spaces open is hugely important. And so what they had asked from us is, given obviously back to school, we saw a number of centers open up at the end of the summer as we went back into the fall. And so now that we've seen about 92% of centers open, what they really wanted to see was that funding phased in, that it was consistent. We have provincial funding rolling out in September. We have federal funding rolling out in October and November. And obviously, as we've learned over the last 6 months, we need to be prudent, that we can't anticipate necessarily where this pandemic is going to go. So we want to be able to be in a position where we're able to respond both to the guidelines put forward by the Chief Medical Officer of Health and the specific needs of childcare centers across this province and Alberta parents.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's the end of the questions. Minister Hussein, did you have any concluding remarks, or we're going to go and walk around the playground a little bit in a moment here?
Well, no, thank you. I just wanted to thank Minister Schultz for always being accessible to me when I had questions about the Alberta system. And when we were having discussions on how best we can support parents in Alberta and support the sector and have the best possible outcomes, obviously there's always more work to be done, but I've really appreciated not only your insight but your hard work to help us get to a point in which we were able to conclude an agreement with Alberta on early learning and childcare. You also gave me insight on the importance of allowing Alberta to have flexibility in terms of how they deploy their funding this year, as well as carryover funding from the last fiscal year, and of course the Safe Restart money. And I look forward to, of course, joining you in your ambition to provide more parents with quality and affordable childcare. And I salute your efforts to be there for parents at this difficult time. Know that the government of Canada is there for Alberta, is there for Albertans and parents as they get back to work, and also enable children to have the best possible start in life in Alberta. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Can't wait till the next time, maybe in person.
Absolutely, I look forward to that.
Thank you again.